Welcome to AGRIMINDS, the podcast where we explore the intersections of personal growth and professional success in the ag industry. I'm Casey Bull, your host. Thank you for joining me as we dive in to the different strategies and insights that will help you level up your life and career. From mental health to leadership development, we're going to cover it all. So sit back and get ready to grow with AGRIMINDS.
Hello and welcome back to the AGRIMINDS podcast. I'm Casey Bull, and today, folks, I have a very exciting guest, Greg Kruger. He's one of the speakers at the AGRIMINDS Summit. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this conversation, and not because the conversation is just a plethora of good information. I can guarantee that. I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but I just know it's going to be good. But because I know that I need these conversations for myself. And that's exactly why I invited Greg to come speak at the summit and why I'm very excited to have him on the podcast to share all the things. Greg, welcome to the AGRIMINDS podcast.
Thank you. I'm so pumped to be here and to come to Ohio.
Yeah. So we're recording this episode at the end of December right now. And the AGRIMINDS Summit is at the end of March 2026. Would you mind telling people a little bit about who the heck you are and maybe why I'm bringing you to the summit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a guy just like everybody else. I'm a human being that is driven towards personal expansion, and I think in my life, I just really want to see what is my potential, and not what is my potential, how much money can I make, what is my potential, how many accolades can I have, but what is my potential and what is this human experience? And especially since my recent trip to Peru, man, I'm super opened up and even deeper with nature and other things. So who I am is just a man who wants to do better each day, who wants to understand this body that I'm in, optimize the body that I'm in, and optimize my emotional states.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty deep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And it keeps me accountable because it's not about anything out there. It's all about in here. So how am I showing up each day and really being able to look in the mirror and understand that it's all, what I'll bring to the summit. And I think it's one of the things you're excited about is reminding people, my tagline for Forgotten Truth Coaching is you are the answer, and everything you need is inside of you for life, because we can't command or control anything in the external world. All we can command is our response or reaction to it. And when we recognize that the nervous system, the body, runs on patterns, programs, and habits, then we recognize that the response or the reaction of the body to the external world when we're not paying attention is what I would call a reaction. And then what you'll find, what I bring to the summit, is this big push for presence. What is presence and what does it mean to be present? And to me, to be fully present, and you've been through meditations and some breath work that we're going to do at the summit. When we are present in our body, we are the witness of it, the experiencer of it, and through presence, we're the director of it. So suddenly the reactions of the nervous system to the external world change when you're present, and I always say that leaders create a pause. And when you can create a pause and you're present with what's happening around you, then the program patterned reactions don't exist. You have choice. And so everything is a choice: how we breathe, how we show up, how we speak, what our energy is. And I think the number one thing I say to my clients, and they know when I put my arms in the air, your energy creates your results, right? And it's the most simple way to de-woo-woo manifestation. Like when I'm in some great energy, the tone, my nervous system, my body, my robot, my avatar is going to respond. How does this body respond to heightened fucking energy, right? Well, the tone, the tempo, the volume of my voice changes, how I stand, everything. And so now my interaction with you changes. So that energy is changing my behaviors, which is changing my results. Where if I come on this podcast, I'm like, hey, what's up, man? We'll be there. We'll see what happens. The results are going to change. So my energy creates my results, and my energy, my emotional state is the one thing I have power over. And it all starts from the base of physiology, breathing, nervous system control. quality of our thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's a
So
lot of things that were way off any kind of answer, but that's just what comes out, right? So
I love it though, because here's the deal. To provide a little context for listeners and to kind of bring this down to ground level, I work with so many people in the industry, the agriculture industry specifically, that are stressed out. They're burnt out. They are on the edge of their seat. Just some of them are depressed. Some of them are so freaking high strung that their relationships are, falling apart. They are having, you know, issues physically in their own bodies because of the stress and just all these pressures. And nobody knows what to do about it, right? Like, there's a lot of talk around going and seeing a counselor or a therapist. There's talk about going to a doctor, getting on some medicine. But honestly, that just doesn't feel like the answer, or at least the only answer. And so for me personally, I went down this path of like, I don't want to take pills. First of all, one, because I don't really know what I'm taking. And two, I can't remember to take pills daily, right? Like, so taking medicine has never really been an option for me. It just doesn't set right. And so it's like, I don't want to be that person that goes to the doctor, takes a pill, and then just becomes this zombie like I've seen so many of my friends and family experience, where it's like, oh, you're depressed? I got a pill for that. And then they just become this shell. They're on autopilot. They may have extreme changes in their weight and then their behavior, and then they're dependent on this medicine. And I feel like there's something better out there for people in ag that's not just medicine. Not saying there's not a place for it, but is there another option? And so I went down this path of like just breathing better. And honestly, and I think you could probably hear about this in a couple of my other podcast episodes, it started at the dentist for me. And I went to the dentist because I was having my teeth cleaned. It was a 6-month checkup. And she's like, you have a cracked molar. I'm like, what do you mean I have a cracked molar? How did I not know I had a cracked molar? And then next thing I know, we're talking about TMJ. The next thing I know, I'm having this whole workup because not only is my jaw out of alignment, my neck muscles are tense, the airway in my throat is super narrow. I have a deviated septum. It's this whole myriad of things. And so one of the things that we started with at the dentist was doing some myofunctional therapy in my mouth. It's like therapy for your tongue, physical therapy for your tongue and your mouth. And so I was doing all these exercises with my tongue and breathing exercises, and then like infrared laser treatment on my shoulders to release the tension and the inflammation. And I was like, what? Like, I can't believe how less frequent I have headaches now, and the ringing of my ears has decreased, and now I'm sleeping better, and I've got like this appliance and a snore strip, and I was like, just those things has changed my mood throughout the day. My mental clarity has increased. My sleep has gotten better. I'm not snipping at my children as much. And it's like, okay, so that opened up the door to, eating foods that don't create as much inflammation, and stretching, and, doing the breath work of literally just getting oxygen to your brain. It sounds so simple, but it's like, how often do I take a deep breath? And so that's what got me on this whole path. And Greg and I actually got introduced like what? I don't know, it had been like 10 years ago or something. And I've just kind of seen your journey over the last several years of you getting deeper and deeper into this work. And I was like, I need to know more about it, and I need to experience this. And so that's a little context as to why I brought him into this conversation, why I'm having him come to the summit. But tell us a little bit about how you got to this.
And I'm not texting. I'm taking notes because I meant to have a piece of paper here for you. You had a lot right there. So much packed into everything you said. How did I get here? There's a couple things. Let me make this part pretty short. How I got here is I was 31 years old, or early 30s, and I remember the scene. I can see it in my memory because one thing I'll teach is that at heightened emotional states, the brain tracks everything that's happening around you. right? Whether it's a heightened great emotional state or a heightened fearful emotional state. So it's why we can have such vivid pictures of memories from heightened emotional states. And I was in this heightened emotional state because I was in my early 30s and I was getting ready to go through my second divorce. And I have two boys with two different women getting ready to go through a second divorce. And I was just sitting there thinking, what a train wreck my life is on paper, you know? And I would never take back any of my life at all, especially, you know, when I say I have two boys with two different women. I love everything has been beautiful in the creation of my life. But at the time I was really recognizing, I'm like, man, I'm going to date again. And I was thinking, what a catch. That this lucky young lady, whoever it is going to tell her mom, oh, I can't wait until you meet Greg. Tell me about him. Well, he's divorced twice. He's got two kids with two different women. Like, and I was just sitting there realizing that my heart and what I want to create in life and how much I really am a man of service and giving and love, and how different my life on paper was from the expression of who I was. When we end up getting to this, at the end of the day, what I recognize is, and without the reason I coach what I coach in physiology and neurology is it lets me transcend spiritual religious beliefs. But the one thing, because everybody's got a brain and body, but the one thing I'll say is that I do believe that when we die, that we have an energy, a soul, a consciousness, awareness, whatever it is, that there's this, that we are this energetic being in a physical experience of life through a body, through an avatar. And when the avatar dies, the energy continues. Energy can't be created or destroyed, right? So when I say that, I come to realize that there's this beauty of who I am. And we are all born into this pre-programmed, pre-patterned robot, this avatar. And this is a record of the past of your ancestors. And we know it is because of the way we look. We look like our ancestors. So we have their gifts, we have some of their attributes, but we also carry trauma from our ancestors. This thing up here is a record of the past of your experience of life. So it's in the first 7 to 8 years of living, the brain, everything is the brain's relationship to it. So in the first 7 to 8 years, this thing's blank and the brain is pretty much unconscious, just looking and watching and taking in vibration of all the vibrations through our 5 senses and creating relationships. You know, at one point, like words are just jumbled and a baby has to start to learn to say car. And a car and a truck and a motorcycle are probably all cars, right? But then all that starts to get refined. So this is a record of the past. This is a record of the past. And by the time we become conscious in our brain activity and discernment, this is a robot that's running on patterns, programs, and habits to stay alive. And we confuse this with this. And we spend our whole life, because this is programmed by our ancestors and by our parents or whoever raised us, which is most likely the ancestors that gave us the same information, our DNA. And so now we spend our whole life trying to figure out how to get this to fit in here. And when we can take this outside and we can start to become a witness to how this behaves, what patterns, programs, and habits it's running on, we understand that this is malleable, this is changeable. And now we can start working on this so that it becomes a reflection of this, right? So if you're just listening to this, when I say this, it's just like this circle I make in my chest, which is like your soul, your truth, your intention. And so I recognized that my life was out of hand and that the way I reacted to things, the way I behaved, everything was nothing that I wanted it to be. And I got on a mission to change that. And I started searching. At the time, there were forums, and I got into forums and self-help forums and started reading more. And I remember getting a beginner's book to meditation, which had this DVD, CD. And I put the CD in. I was so disappointed because it was like, close your eyes, and as you breathe in, think breathe in, and as you breathe out, think breathe out. And I'm like, that's meditation? I'm like, what? And there's some sense of truth to that. Anyways, I digress. That's how I started. And then I hired my first coach. Man, I remember, so I was sitting in my tattoo artist's chair, and he was like, dude, I hired a life coach. I'm like, what? This is like 15, 16 years ago. I'm like, what's a life coach? You know, it wasn't a thing back then. And he told me, and I was like, how much you pay for that? And he's like, $10,000 for 6 months. I'm like, you're out of your mind, man. Like crazy. And then he's like, well, but I think you should check him out. He's like, cause he's going to start coaching people to be coaches. And he said, and you're just the guy who a lot of our friends, you know, when they want some uplifting energy, they just go to, you know, they go to you. So maybe it's something you should check out. And there was something in that whole interaction, and something before I even talked to Dustin, that by the time I got on the phone with him, I was a yes. He didn't have to sell me. I figured out how to make it happen, and I hired him, and then he led me to NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And then I started realizing how the brain works and why I was behaving the way I was behaving, how I could see it in my family tree and the patterns that were passed on through everyone. And yeah, I just became a man on fire. It started because I hurt, because when the pain of staying the same is more than the pain of change, that's when things happen. When we say enough is enough. And I looked at my life and I was tired of it. And then I'll say, over the next 15 years until now, I think one of the common mistakes is we start to learn things. We're like, ooh, I got it now. And then shit falls apart. You're like, oh, I thought I had it. Ooh, I got it now. And so what we realize is we never get there. Just keep expanding and move forward. So now, the stress. And if there's one part that people tune into in this podcast, it'll be this, because stress is a killer. And I want to just kind of give a recap as to why that is. I've worked in the space as a veteran. I've worked with veterans in mental health and substance abuse rehab. I'm working on and building a platform with first responders, and work with firefighters and some police officers and nervous system regulation, and kind of getting in. And for people who think that, ooh, breath work, meditation, that's woo woo and new agey, I get it. I remember when I first started meditating, I thought, dude, am I going to start dressing like I had a picture of me with like white robes and a Swami headdress, and like, am I going to be a weirdo? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I need some change. And clearly, I mean, I am pretty weird when you get to know me, but I'm not. but it's been just part of the growth, and it's physiology, and it's neurology, and it's not woo woo, and it's not new age. And so when we just start with stress has negative detriments, stress has positive detriments, and the positive detriments are adaptation and growth and change, personal development. In order for change to happen, a stress has to happen, right? So when we go to the gym, we're putting the body in a positive stress. And what does the body do when it's out of its normal function and it's working through something difficult? It goes through an adaptation, and the stress helps adapt the body. If we always stay the same, doing the same thing, talking to the same people, eating the same foods, watching the same content, staying in the same emotional state, no change can ever happen. So stress is required for change, stepping into new patterns, trying breath work. It's going to feel weird. Trying meditation. I have a hard time sitting still. Training the body. When you tell the body to sit and stay, it's going to adapt. So stress is required. But let's go to the most elevated part of stress, which is fight or flight. So in our involuntary nervous system, we have our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. Sympathetic is when we're active and digesting food and thinking. And when we get into stress, the body's response, and the most elevated aspect of the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. So let's say we're out hiking on a trail and we come across a grizzly bear and it stands up in front of you. I don't care who you are and how tough you are. You get a 10-foot grizzly standing up in front of you, and your nervous system is going to go into fight or flight. The first thing that happens is your breath shifts to your chest, where you have more activation of your sympathetic nervous system. the data coming in through your five senses, through what you're hearing, through what you're seeing, through how your body is breathing, is informing your brain, uh-oh, we're in trouble. We could die here. That information is hitting the amygdala, and the amygdala says, turn off all reasoning. Turn off your ability to think. Why? Well, because I am the type of person who, when things happen in my life, I'm kind of like, I wonder why this happened. What's that showing me? And my body, that once this thing is built for survival, the brain and body are built for survival. Survival happens in the familiar known. This thing always wants us to stay the same, and this thing wants to keep us alive. So when we come across that bear, this thing does not want Greg at the helm saying, I wonder why life has brought me to this point. What is the energetic meaning of a bear, right? The brain says, Greg, turn off Greg for a second. Turn off Greg's access to the body. We're taking over for a moment. And so all the energy goes from anything that's happening in my body. And this is what's important about stress. All the energy to digest undigested food, the energy that might be used to fighting certain disease states that are happening in the body, all the energy that is not necessary right now to survive goes to the extremities to fight, run, or hide. Okay. Now, that's great. That keeps us alive. What we don't think about is fight or flight and recovery. Because what's happening, again, when we're at a super heightened level of stress, we can't think. When we're super high level of stress, we're not digesting. When we're super high level of stress, and the brain is just a computer in a dark room, and it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what we're thinking about. It's just taking information and it's saying, based on this information, holy shit, we should be scared. Rally the troops. Now, we can't sleep in fight or flight, because if we slept, we would be dead. So all the stress hormones are overloading our body. All the adrenaline's rushing, right? We're not digesting food. So if the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what we think about, let's say we walk away from that bear, and all we're doing is thinking about how intense that was and how we almost died all the way home. Our brain is still in front of the bear. Our brain thinks we're still in front of the bear. So when we go home, what's the energy we're in that we give to our loved ones? Shit that causes problems. Do we sleep well? No. Do we digest our food? No. So when we don't sleep well, we wake up and we're stressed. How does that affect our thinking, our relationships, everything that's happening in our life? And I think people can probably relate to this. We've all had times when we're sitting at our desk or we're at work and we're just like, I can't think. I just can't think. For some reason, I can't think right now, which is a sign that our body is in high stress. So when we have presence and awareness enough to recognize that if I can't think, that means my brain is turning off my ability to reason. That happens when my brain thinks that we're not safe. And when we're not safe, specific breathing patterns are happening. I'm breathing up here. I'm thinking about something that's probably not happening in my present moment, right? Something from the past, or concern about the future, something about money, something about a fight I was in, because the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what we think about. So what I always say is, when we have awareness of, because nothing changes without awareness, we have awareness of, and then take accountability, because knowledge is one thing, but the application of the knowledge is everything. So we have awareness of and take accountability for our breath. We command our nervous system, we command our physiology. When we have awareness of and take accountability for the quality of our thoughts, we command our emotional energetic state. You are the answer. So now I'm sitting there and I'm not in front of the grizzly bear, and I'm recognize that my body feels off. I recognize I'm having a hard time thinking, and I pause and I say, okay, I'm aware of this. Everything starts with the physiology. So let me first take accountability for how I'm breathing. Let me pause for a second like you did. Learn a little bit about breathing. Practice it. Just do it. And it's so simple. Let me make sure I'm breathing in and out my nose. Let me make my exhale twice as long as my inhale. Sometimes that's everything you need. There's so many different breathing techniques. And so we change our breathing, and now the nervous system feels safe. And the nervous system communicates to the brain, hey, we're out of danger. Turn Greg back on. Now I can think again. Now I recognize, what am I thinking about? Well, I'm thinking about the fight I was just having with my spouse. But where am I? I'm driving down the road and there's a beautiful sunrise, but I'm not watching the sunrise. I'm in the fight. So let me pause. Let me allow myself to be present. Let me be where I am versus telling my brain to be someplace that I'm not, which is causing all of this stress. So it's fight, flight, and recover. And when I have these first responders or these veterans start really getting into their presence and into their breath and commanding their physiology, they start to realize, like, I don't need something outside of me. I need to show up for me. And I'll pause here and I'll say this: leadership starts with self-leadership. I do not believe in strengths and weaknesses. I believe in strengths and areas of opportunity. Why? Because an area of opportunity is just a place where if I put my resources of time, attention, and focus, I can be better. As a musician, I don't play piano yet. It's an area of opportunity. If I started practicing piano and learning piano, I could play piano, but right now it's still an area of opportunity. So I say that to say, if you don't understand how simply breathing changes the way your body feels and changes your nervous system, if you don't understand how the brain works, at least at the most basic levels, to create patterns, programs, and habits, it's the reason why you react and say the things and then you say, why did I say that? Because you didn't consciously say, here, I think the best thing to do right now is to yell at this person and call them a name. No, you just do it because the body, it says, when we're stressed, this is how we react. And the brain and body always want us to stay the same. So we'll always behave how we've always behaved. So if you're not aware of how these basic functions work and how you can actually command them and change the entirety of your life, then you have a huge area of opportunity to improve your self-leadership. And so that's what I coach on. That's what I focus on. It's all in the mirror, everything you need.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay.
Stress management.
Let's take a second here, because there was so much that I took notes on this too. I think that this is very foreign language, terminology, concepts for
Sure.
a lot of people in general, but specifically the people I work with in agriculture. Because I mean, we don't talk about this, right? Like, these aren't things that are typically introduced to us unless somebody has made the effort to go seek it out. I think it's becoming more and more common to talk about your mental health, which is still kind of a stigma in the industry to talk about mental health. But I think we're getting there. And if we could relate this to the agriculture industry for just a second, right? Like, I'm thinking about my childhood growing up, working alongside my dad and my grandpa. Let's just say we're running through the field, combine's running, and a belt breaks in the combine somewhere, right? Like, you stop in the middle of the field and instantly people are pissed. There's no, wonder what happened. There's no reason, right? Like, they're instantly in that fight or flight mode. And so, like, I just remember my grandpa just instantly being pissed. And now everybody around them is like, oh God, who's going to get the wrath, right? Like, whose fault is it? What kind of ass chewing are we going to, get into? And so all of us around him were just like instantly also in fight or flight mode. Like, are we going to have to defend ourselves? So everything just hit the fan right then. And I mean, this happened all the time. And so then wrenches were clanking and people were pissed and cuss words were flying. And I mean, I know that was ingrained in me too, of just like, that's how you react when shit doesn't go the way that you want it to go. And I never remember too many people in my life handling situations where something goes wrong calmly. And then I was introduced to somebody who something happened in their life, and I don't remember, I think like their kid spilt something all over the kitchen or something, and they're just like, "Okay, cool, let's just clean it up. No big deal." I'm like, "That was great. How did you know how to not yell in that situation?" Like if somebody were to spill stuff all over my kitchen, my instant reaction was, "You're not paying attention. What the hell? Like get a towel, clean it up. Come on." Like, and I hate that I show up that way. And that is a conscious thing that I am struggling with every day to not be like that. But I mean, that's my instant reaction and it's my default. And I don't like the way that I show up. And so I'm constantly trying to like, okay, take a breath. Is it that big of a deal? We'll just clean it up and move on. Like, I'm trying to break this cycle, if you will. But I know so often in agriculture, there are things that are not our control that we are always reacting to. And very seldom can we be proactive. But the things that we can be proactive with are getting yourself into these habits and these mindsets of being calm, taking the breaths, regulating your nervous system. So that way, when shit does hit the fan, you do react differently. And so I'm just trying to like bring it down to like layman's terms of like, this is something that nobody's ever really talked about with me before. So how do I understand? How do I relate to this? But you mentioned something about like working with first responders, police officers, veterans, things like that. And a lot of the people in the ag industry do those things in addition to farming. So they're getting this high adrenaline, high stress from so many areas where it's like most people are who are volunteer firefighters, for example, they're farming, but they're also volunteer firefighters, but they're also volunteer like reserve deputies or whatever it may be. And the thing that they thought they were doing that was helpful for their community is also causing them high stress. And so it's kind of confusing that it's like, here's this thing that I was giving and hoping to be helpful with that is then also causing me to be stuck in these states. What's something that if somebody doesn't come to the summit, how can they take everything that you've said so far in the last half hour and like use it? Like what's something practical? Where can somebody start with experiencing regulating the nervous system?
I have a list of daily success habits that are mandatory for my clients, which include daily breath work, daily meditation, journaling with various aspects of journaling. And these I want to note, I teach language also. Words have definitive meaning, but words also have energetic meaning. And that's not a woo-woo thing, energetic meaning. It's relational. There are swear words that people don't say in the United States, but if you go over to London, they'll use the C word like it's a comma, right? And so words matter, and it's only because of our relationship to them. So when I go in for first responders, my introduction, I say, here's who I'm not. I'm not a therapist and I'm not a counselor. Now, that's not to put down therapists and counselors. It's to make two distinctions. One, I'm not a clinician and I know my role. So if a clinician is needed, I'll bring one in. Two, I'm not a therapist and I'm not a counselor because I know the word therapist and counselor is like, So I'm like, you might not work with a therapist, you might not work with a counselor, but I bet you work with a coach. Right? And what's the difference in how we feel with words? So I want to say that because as I say breath work, meditation, and journaling, people are like, yeah. Whatever. But
especially
that is
the men in my industry. Yeah.
That is a pattern.
Like, same thing. Yeah.
That's a pattern. Yeah. Dude, I'm a prior service Marine Corps who also teaches guys it's okay to feel, it's okay to cry. Right. And that right there might turn off some of the men out there is like cry. But it's just how we understand the functions of the body and how we understand these words. And if we actually want to make change, we have to do something we've never done before. So these daily success habits are meant to break the patterned programs, to be a pattern interrupt, to create change on purpose. Right? Sit still for 5 minutes. I mean, agricultural people, first responders, they don't sit still. Greg, I can't sit still and meditate for 20 minutes. Of course you can't, because your avatar, your robot, is used to being busy all the time. So the moment you stop, you start to feel guilty. Is there something I could be doing? Is there something I could do to be productive? And we get past that. And you get to recognize that truly creating the best you creates the best business. The best you creates you're the best lover, the best spouse, the best parent. The best you is the best everything. The best you comes from the best energy. Because everybody has had, while it might not be standard, everybody has had a situation where, yeah, they yell at their kid and then they feel miserable. Or where they're like, yeah, some days the kid spills the milk, and you're like, what are you doing? Some days the kid spills the milk and you're like, oh, bud, it's okay. The exact same event happened. What's the difference? Your energy. Because the energy that you're in changes the way that the avatar behaves. Because you're not thinking about whether you're yelling or whether you say it's okay. Those things are just reactive patterned programs. And let me give you an example where presence really matters. Everybody who drives or is driven for a long amount of time has had a moment where they drive and they go drive for 20 minutes from here to there, and they get there and they're like, I have no idea how I got here, right? You're off in la la land, you're off daydreaming, but somehow you manage to drive on an interstate and down the road at 80 miles an hour, and you're there. Why? Because your body and brain are good at what they practice. What they practice becomes unconscious, invisible, and what's invisible drives the behaviors of the avatar, of the robot. The robot is built on patterns, programs, and habits. So it's all about what we've practiced. So that when we're checked out, so now the difference is, instead of being checked out behind the wheel of a car, your body is the car. And when you're checked out and you're thinking about, what do I got to do at work? What do I got to do here? What do I got to do there? You're off here, and something happens with your kids. Since you're not driving the robot anymore, the robot's just going to say, okay, everything is the brain's relationship to it, a stimulus and a response. When this happens, the body behaves like this. When this happens, I yell. When this happens, I release my stress on you, right? When this happens, I laugh. When this happens, Joe thinks it's funny. I think it's insulting, right? So we all have these different patterns that we're used to. And when we're checked out, when we're not present, then this is going to behave the way it's always behaved. And then we beat ourselves up and we say, man, I don't want to behave like that anymore. Well, your consciousness, your awareness, your soul, you didn't do that. In fact, you weren't even present. That's just your body reacting. You want to know who you are, be present and see how you respond when you're actually trying, when you're actually present. And so what I will say to people is that we are living and experiencing a life through the filters of a biological robot that is built for survival. Survival happens in the familiar and in the known. So the brain and body always will behave as it's always behaved until you tell it to do different. Because we can witness it, we can experience it, but through presence, we can direct it. So when I tell a client, sit and meditate, okay, I don't expect you to go from 0 to 20 minutes. Sit still for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, as you hear the thoughts of your brain, get up and move. We got things to do. We got things to do. Tell it, shh, sit and stay. Train it like a dog. Train it like an animal. It's this biological robot. If you tell yourself to sit for 5 minutes, you can make yourself sit for 5 minutes. And I would challenge, that's fairly mentally weak if you can't just like make yourself, nothing's happening, just sit. You might have to sit in a lot of thought. And so you want to get up. Why? So the thought shuts up. But that's why you start focusing on your breathing, right? So this is where now we start using techniques in nervous system regulation to get us to sit still. Now, what happens when the body sits still for 5 minutes? After it sits still for 5 minutes over a repeated number of days, we add a minute. And guess what happens? The body starts getting good at that. There is a version of Greg Kruger that didn't meditate, that was explosive with anger, that didn't do any of these things. I trained this thing to be what it is now. Now my days without breathing, without presence, without awareness, without, whether it's verbal or actual written journaling, without awareness of what I'm navigating, that just doesn't happen. But I don't have to think about it anymore. And that's why I say it's the paradox of the brain and the body, is it wants us to stay the same because survival happens in the familiar. But we can tell it to do new things. Go to the gym. Stop shoving that food in my face, right? Choose that food. Speak kinder, drive slower. We can get it to do other things. When we practice it long enough, that becomes our new baseline. So this is where we realize when people say ignorance is bliss, it's because it's fucking work. It's work. But when we feel good, I mean, who doesn't want to wake up in the morning and be like, I love my life. My life is a continuous stream of miracles. Man, opportunity exists everywhere. I love my kids. My kids love me. My relationships are beautiful. Man, I slept so good. I feel so great. Who doesn't want to do that? Everybody can. What we don't want to do is actually say, what we want to do is easily say, meditation, breath work. We want to dismiss the things that are different instead of just saying, I want something different in my life. I recognize and I'm strong enough to admit that I'm not where I want to be. So why not just try something different, especially the things that feel really different? Right? Because if the body and brain want us to stay the same happens in the familiar. So if we're doing a new activity and it's comfortable, it's not really new. It's just a different activity that keeps us in the same emotional state. Yeah. So we get to realize self-leadership, leaning into the new things. When I sat and thought to myself, God, I'm going to be a weirdo if I meditate. Oh, do I have to stop, I've stopped drinking, all these different things. I'm like, what I came to find out is that everything that changed and went away was just part of evolution of myself. I didn't have to do any of it. All I had to do was start by breathing, start by pausing, start by taking it. Right now, what I'm working on, and after 15, 16 years of and all this work that I do, that I coach in, is a result of all the work I've done here. I'm getting ready to launch a course, and all of it is everything I've applied to myself. So it's nothing that's just hypothetical. It's just everything that I've done. And so it's still ongoing. So because I'm a coach doesn't mean life doesn't life. I have clients who get so excited when they see me going through hard times. It's a joke now because because they started elevating their lives and their lives started moving in powerful ways, and then lifes and hits them hard and they have an angry reactive response or something, and they beat themselves up and they think, man, I thought I was doing better. It's not that life doesn't life. So then they see me and they're like, oh, but he's a coach and he's still going through it. So it's one of the most relatable things for my clients. They say you're relatable because when I go through my things, I'll tell them, yeah, I'm going through this, whatever, this end of relationship. And here's what's happened. And here's how frantic I was. And here's how upset I was. And here's what I applied to it. Because it's not about life not happening. It's about me being aware of what's happening within me in the moment so that I can feel it, because we got to feel it to get through it. So I can, which is why teaching men to feel emotions is important and to hold those. We don't have to, just because we feel them doesn't mean we have to cry and let stuff out, but we get to feel it so that we can get through it. Maybe we feel it and we hit punching bags or whatever that might be, but we get to feel it and get through it. And now it becomes a game for me is how fast can I feel it fully, understand it, and get back to my energy that's up here, because the best me is where I want to be. And it's all just practice. We're good at what we practice. What we practice becomes invisible, just like walking. We used to have to think about every single step we take. Now, all you ag people know you can be throwing this over a shoulder, and somehow have a kid on you and be carrying everything and be working or whatever you need to do in the fields. And you're not thinking about a single movement of your body because you have taught your body how to move, how to turn a wrench, how to do all these things. And you've practiced it so much that your body just does it. What if you just started with 5 minutes of breathing every morning? After a while, your body will say, this is how we breathe. This is how we breathe when we're stressed. This is how we respond to stress. This is how we react to stress. This is how we recover from stress. This is what we think about when we catch ourselves in anger. It's just practice.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought when you were talking about like taking 5 minutes, my instant thought was, I bet so many of the moms listening to this are like, 5 minutes, you must not be home with kids. You must not know. And it's like, hang on. I am also home with 2 kids all day, every day. I'm also running a business. I'm also working around my husband's swing shift. And so, like, finding 5 minutes to yourself can feel impossible. But one of the things that I started to do was I'm incorporating my kids into those 5 minutes. They need to know what 5 minutes of
Yes.
silence feels like too. And everything that I'm doing, I'm teaching them, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. And so, like, what I've noticed is when I'm preparing lunch for them, for example, I'm putting all this stuff on the plate, running around, kind of frantic. And then I don't even sit down to eat. I make my plate and I'm shoving it in my mouth just so that way I'm done and ready for when they're ready to move on or before a tantrum happens or something spills. I've at least got something in my belly, right? And the best thing I ever did was eat in slow motion. It sounds so
Mm,
crazy, but I
mm-mm.
literally I pretend I'm in slow motion so that way I can feel and taste and savor every bite. I'm not being chased by a lion. There's no lion. I don't have to be in fight or flight during lunch.
Let me interject, because before we pass it, we're good at what we practice, and what we practice becomes unconscious and invisible, and that's the way the avatar or the biological robot works. For those moms who are listening, or dads, because I was, I raised boys, and now my boys are in their 20s. I don't have any responsibilities, but I can always remember back to when, right? And making that time. Man, would I parent different, knowing what I know now, but that's beside the point. The point I wanted to make is that in the first 7 to 8 years of life, the brain is almost all unconscious. So what does that mean? It means that I will say this to anybody. When you have an infant or a baby, you know that every time one thing happens, it starts a habit because their brain is new. I remember one of my boys was slow talking and he wasn't talking, but then the moment that he pointed at something and he grunted and his mom reached for it and gave it to him. His brain created a relationship with grunting and getting. So then we're like, okay, we got to break this. Let's teach him some sign language. So say more, say please, because he wasn't saying words. Well, then what do we train? Sign language versus talking, right? So now as a mother, and you are 100% reactive, what is the unconscious pattern that the child is being taught? That everything revolves around them, that they get what they want, instant gratification? No, it might be a pain in the ass. It might not be fun, but you tell them sit and stay. When I am doing this, you will respect me, right? Or you will, this is what gratitude is. I'm serving you. I'm not obligated to serve you from a place of stress. I'm choosing to care for you. And so now I'm also remembering that everything that they do is creating a pattern, a program, and a habit. And let's not even think about it of how annoying it is right now to have little toddlers that expect everything to be about them. Let's think about how they practice that for the rest of their lives and what kind of relationships they create when they have those patterns of practiced immediate gratitude or immediate instant gratification, and everybody's here to serve me. And what type of adult do they become? And what type of life do they create? And what type of stress do they then have to navigate later in their life? So we do our kids a service by, yes, saying, hey, I get to eat too. So everybody sits. And we teach our kids, hey, if the best me is the best dad, the best lover, the best entrepreneur, the best everything, the best me and my best energy is of most service to the world. So you, my children, you, my friends, you, my coworkers, you want me to be selfish enough to get into the best energy that I can be in, because you're going to get the best benefit of who I am as a human being and the truth of who I am. So why wouldn't I say to my kids, hey, I need 20 minutes right now. You guys stay put, do this thing. If you don't, you're going to lose this privilege. When it's time for dad to meditate, everybody is quiet. I close the door and I come back. Now, can you do that with a 1-year-old? No, I understand. This is where then we really start to say, why would I not say to my partner, hey, the best me is the best lover. You want some good loving? Give me 5 minutes of peace so I can go sit, breathe, reconnect myself, get into a great energy, and you're going to benefit from it.
Who wouldn't want that? You know what I mean?
Now, the question is who's going to do it? Go do it. Now, will you own it? Because it's not, you don't get to point at your spouse and say, well, you were gone all day and I've had to deal with kids. So this is why no.
And that's why the language, the words are so important. And man, I think we should probably do part 2. Are you going to be covering this at the summit, the language part?
All of these topics I'm talking about in about a 45-minute to an hour presentation. Yeah, as to what that is, but language will be a part of it because language is huge. Let me, and I know we'll start wrapping up here, but let me give some parents some really good language tips for neurology. The brain doesn't understand a negative command. What do I mean by that? Don't think of an elephant. You can't not. You might not be a visual person per se, but what happens is when we learn, because everything is the brain's relationship to it. One point we didn't know what an elephant was. Once you learn what an elephant is and you hear the vibration of the word, the sound used to be blah, blah, blah. Now it's elephant. Oh, I can make that out. And so that vibration comes into the ear, it gets processed by the brain, and the brain says, what's my relationship to this vibration of sound called elephant? Oh, it's this thing with a trunk. It's this giant, awesome beast, right? So the brain, once we learn something, the brain's relationship to it, the brain is constantly processing its relationship to everything outside of us. So now we go to our kids and we sit down and it's breakfast time or lunchtime. We say, here you go. Don't spill your milk. What happens? They spill their milk and we get mad at them. I just told you not to spill the milk. Right? But really what we did was we gave them the most likely command to create the thing we didn't want, because their brain thought, what does spill the milk look like? And so they're, now, so now here's a de-woo-wooing, demystifying aspect of manifestation. Ooh, manifestation, right? Manifestation isn't about saying, I want to be a millionaire and boom, I'm a millionaire. That's not how it works. It's about what we focus on. So what we get to realize with language is we don't get what we want. We get what we focus on. So what I want is for the milk to be consumed by the child.
I can say, consume the milk.
I could say, don't spill your milk, or I can say, please be careful and drink all your milk. Please be careful with your milk and drink it. Now, a 2-year-old, because they're still clumsy, could spill the milk still, but like in the grand scheme of things, we get what the concept is here. If I say don't spill the milk, the brain creates a picture of what does spilling the milk mean? What does it look like? Oops, I did it. If I say please be careful and drink the milk, the brain says, what does it mean to drink the milk? Okay. So what does that teach us? Ask for what we want. Which brings us to the point of start paying attention to how much people, yourself and others, say the word don't. And I'll give you one more example of don't and how it affects how language instantly changes the programming patterning of the robot. We're hanging out, and let's say it's before AGRIMINDS, and we're chitty chatting in whatever our geodomes that we're hanging out in, and you're like, all right, Greg, I'll see you in a minute. Don't forget to bring that box of shirts. Okay. And I say, I won't. And then everybody's had this happen. Somebody tells them, don't forget something. And then they get to an event and they're like, oh man, how did I forget that? Right. Literally, You're sitting there and you're saying to me, Greg, don't forget to bring that. And the brain says, what does it mean to forget? Now, what's my next behavior? I say, I won't. And I continue on doing whatever it is I was doing and continue on my way, unconscious, not paying attention, and I forget. What I do when somebody says to me, hey, Greg, don't forget to bring that box of shirts, I will literally out loud and probably point at them. I say, I will remember the shirts. Because I know that they just gave me, as soon as I hear don't, I recognize they just gave my computer, my brain is just a computer in a dark room, doesn't know the difference between what's real and what I'm thinking about. It's just taking information in, creating its relationship to it and saying, when this happens, stimulus response. You told me forget, here's what forgetting looks like. So I recognize that you gave me an unintentional, unconscious program of language to forget something. So I will consciously override your programming with my own program and say, I will remember the shirts. Now, let's see how this holds up for you. If you were in my role and I'm walking out the door and I say, don't forget, and you say, Greg, I will remember the shirts. What is the next physical action that you take most likely?
I'm going to go get the shirts.
You sure are. So before, don't forget, and you're probably going to just keep on doing the same thing. That's how we forget. But when I say I will remember, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to get that box. I'm going to set it right by the door because I can't miss this on my way out the door. Or I'm just going to say, oh shit, I'll take it all the way to the car and I'll put it right in the car right then. So now simply from remember versus don't forget.
God, that's good.
The behavior of the robot has changed because the behavior of the robot is based on patterns and programs. Everything is the brain's relationship to it. When it hears these words, it does this. When it hears these words, it does that. Which is, again, why, what pops in my head there is when people are like, why are you mad? Don't be mad. I'm not mad,
I'm not mad. Oh, God.
Right. Versus, you okay? Do you need a hug? Many different words can happen.
You just change the entire tone. Yeah.
The entire tone of everything. And so when we start to be, again, awareness, presence, when we start to realize and become responsible for the words that are coming out of our mouth, man, that can change things. And what we tend to do is I'll say to you, don't forget. And then you forget. And then I point at you and be mad at you. I didn't even realize that like you were unconscious and I was unconscious, and we both unintentionally created this forgetting together because I started it. I told you to forget the things, but now I'm blaming you for why the things aren't there. And I'm blaming you for the energy I'm in as a result of the things not being there. But I'm responsible for my energy. And this is one of the last things I'll wrap on. I believe the power of free will is to choose our energetic emotional state, because the energy that I'm in changes the way my body shows up. I'm not consciously saying, when I'm in hype energy, I'm not consciously saying, ooh, throw my hands in the air. Ooh, change your voice like this. No, it's all just happening. When I'm in a low energy, I'm not consciously saying, walk and slump your shoulders and drag your feet. the body will always respond to the energy that we're in. So now if I know that the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what I think about, if I know that I have the power of language to affect the reality around me, if I know my energy changes my results, if I know it all starts with physiology, then I know that it's all my choice. And so that my power of free will is to create my energy, and the best version of me is the best everything. Now, then if I have a client and he said, and it's a guy, or regardless, but if it's a guy and he says, well, I'm mad because my wife was blah, 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 blah. And I'll just say, oh, she owns you. And yeah, dude, she owns you, because what you're telling me is like, here's another woo-woo statement that people don't relate to is, that you're giving up your energy, right? Or take your power back, or whatever that looks like. Or you're giving up your power is what people say. When I point at, and my number one red flag in life is me pointing outside of myself. You're the reason why I'm upset. You forgot that, so I'm upset. You talk to me in a shitty tone, so you're the reason. We tend to get, as humans, it's a human condition. We think, I should feel, here's another language thing, I should feel upset because them. When we start saying, instead of saying, how should I feel as a result of this thing in the outside world that I have no control over, how should I feel? And we start saying, how shall I feel? Then we remember it's a choice. And the moment that I say, you're the reason why I'm upset, is me saying, you own my energy. Your behavior, or the behavior of everything that's happening in the outside world, chooses the energy that I'm in, and the energy that I'm in creates my results. That is the biggest victim mentality that I've been able to look at within myself and shatter and work on still as a human being. But to recognize, no matter what happens in the outside world, I have the ability to pause for a second. Let me go to the bathroom. All moms can walk to the bathroom, close the door, close your eyes, breathe on purpose, think on purpose, get my fucking energy right, and then open my eyes. And I always say, whatever energy you're in when you open your eyes is the version of you that you give to the world. You get to choose your energy. Yeah. Who do you want to be when you open your eyes? And you'll hear that in the meditations and my coursework and in the meditations at the summit. It's like, when we point at the outside world, well, the tractor broke, that's why I'm mad. No.
The mechanic didn't put this in right. Oh, I've heard that so many times. The mechanic, John Deere, you screwed up. You didn't build this right. Yeah.
But when we just say, shit, man, the tractor broke. Okay. Yeah. Well, am I going to repair the tractor faster by being in an angry mood? How many of us ever said, I was so pissed off last night that I had the best idea? Never, ever. Right? It's like when we're in great moods, we have great ideas. The world around us starts to reflect. We start to see, and I really jump into that in the neurology portion of my presentation as well, because there's a lot there. But I'll just end it on this. The external world is happening. Surrender control of it, because you can't command it. Recognize that every way that you react to the external world is not a reflection of you as a human being. It's a reflection of the patterning of your biological robot, of your avatar. Yeah. So that when we see that we respond to a kid spilling the milk, or a coworker doing this, or an employee not doing something, and we don't like the way we feel, that's our area of opportunity to have some self-leadership, to adjust our energy in the moment, because we know that when you're in your best energy, you're going to handle that employee better. You're going to handle that spouse better. You're going to handle those kids better. When we start to do that, now we're really managing stress. Coming full circle is to realizing that the ownership of stress recovery is in the mirror. And when we when we utilize stress for the positive benefits of adaptation, beautiful. And when we have negative stress happening and we respond to it instead of react to it, we can recalibrate the system. We recalibrate the system, we feel better. We talk to our spouses nicer. We talk to our kids nicer. We talk to our employees nicer. We get better results. Our energy creates our results, and it all starts with self-leadership.
Yeah, and I will say it's awkward sometimes to implement or incorporate this new way of showing up. One, because it's different for you, it's out of habit. But two, people are seeing a new version of you showing up and they're like, wait, that's not how you react. That's not how you talk. Right.
Mm.
Like, and so it is a transition, but it's a
Mm.
choice. And I will say that I'm I catch myself and not always I don't always correct. I don't always have the chance to correct. I don't always have the chance to show up right the first time, but I'm continuing to be aware of what I'm saying, how I'm reacting. And again, it's just about awareness of saying, okay, next time I'm going to know better, or next time I at least am aware of at least a little bit earlier than I was the time before. And so it's all about awareness. This is a process, like Greg was saying, it's always evolving, it's always changing. Growth is not there's no start and then finish. It's just always there. It is and will be. And I think that that's the exciting thing about this experience that we get on earth. And what a relief to not have to bear the burden of the world. Like there's already somebody who's done that. And that's on them, right? Like what a relief that we just get to worry about how we're reacting and how we're showing up. And then teaching this next generation. We talk about legacy a lot in agriculture. Like that's the type of legacy I want to pass down to my kids is showing up better, being intentional, focusing on what really matters and what I can even control, right? Some of this I can't control and I'm worrying about it for some reason. And so like I said, I love these conversations. I know that this is a lot to take in for somebody who's never been exposed to this way of thinking, this way of talking, this way of doing. And so feel free to listen to this again. Join us at the AgriMinds Summit in March 2026 and experience it for yourself. Greg and I did a session a couple of months ago, and he put me through a full blown, like, actually, I don't even think it was a full blown. I think it was just like a teaser of just like what it feels like to go through this breath work and like experience slowing down for a minute. And it was powerful. And it was only like 20 minutes. And so come to the summit, experience it for yourself. And, I'll put all of the contact information for you in the show notes if somebody wants to reach out to you. But if you are online or if you have something, feel free to plug it in right here if people want to follow along with what you're doing.
I'm in this space of navigating my relationship to social media. So I don't always put everything on social media. I put things on social media when I feel this really draw to communicate it. And I probably put it more on Facebook than I put it on Instagram. But my Instagram is meditation junkie, meditation JUNKIE. My Facebook is just Greg Kruger. And then ForgottenTruthCoaching.com. So Forgotten Truth Coaching is my platform. Forgotten Truth is you are the answer. It's all inside of you. That's what we've forgotten. And so ForgottenTruth.com. And yeah, follow me. I'll be, like I said, I'll be launching my first course, which will be everything teaching wise. I'm really excited for this because I've been working with a videographer and we're in the final edits and everything will be moduled for videos and teaching segments. Then I'll have a written portion. I'll have homework assignments, all the daily success habits, everything laid out. But again, the last thing, and this is what we get to experience at the AgriMinds Summit as well. I'll always say experience is truth. So for anybody listening and they're like, I don't know if I can I don't know about this stuff. Try it. Experience is truth. I can explain to you what the waves of the ocean are like, but then you go out and you let the waves hit you and tumble you around and force you and you realize how powerless you are. The experience of the waves tells you what the ocean is. It's not me telling you what water is and how it moves. the experience of breathing on purpose or sitting and being guided by somebody just to think about a time when you were happy. When we do those things, there's certain ways for it to happen that you suddenly recognize, like, wow, okay, now I understand what that is. So experience is truth. So this course I'm launching, and what we'll do at AGRIMINDS is, if you just listen to this podcast and get the information, you've had at least exposure to it. So your brain's thought about it, your brain's practiced it, but that's it. So the coursework will also have an experiential portion where it's all my own recorded music, guided meditations, breathing exercises, so it can all be in one spot. And what I'm really pumped about this is because then I'm going to launch a lot more group work. Because what I like to do with my clients is to make what I say is, we're good at what we practice. What we practice becomes unconscious or invisible, and what's invisible or unconscious is driving our behaviors. So my goal is working with clients is spending time making the unconscious conscious. Let's figure out, there's tricks to finding what are the blind spots? What are the things I'm missing? So now I can quit teaching. It's all in the modules. And now we can just start working more in the patterning, because the patterns and programs are what light me up. So I'll be launching that soon. So, but reach out, Greg at ForgottenTruthCoaching.com if you want to email me or reach out, and for sure come to the summit, because you will have an experiential portion there and workshop. What the hardest part for people to do, everything is patterns, everything is programs. This thing wants us to stay the same. So think about a time when you were like, ooh, I want to do that thing. Within 5 minutes, you hear the brain say, it's too expensive. Maybe next time. We can't afford it right now. Well, what would my husband think? What would my wife think? So our heart and our energy want us to go one way, and the robot wants us to stay the same. So this is why people say, get comfortable being uncomfortable, is because we have to break through. We have to impose a positive stress to get an adaptation. So if anybody out there, whether it's working with me or working with Casey or working with anybody, it doesn't matter. I'm not the answer. You're the answer, right? So I'm not your answer, but I can provide you some guidance, and we can work powerfully together. Same with you. And so, but what happens is we have this draw to improve ourselves. When I was sitting there saying, oh my God, I'm going through a second divorce. What am I going to do? And I started taking action. And when I faced that first, and I've put $15,000 on a credit card to be a part of a leadership mastermind before that changed everything. And I'll just leave it at this. That $15,000 is the reason why I just got back from my most transformative life experience of over 2 weeks in Peru, in the Amazon jungle, in the Sacred Valley. So many experiences. As a result, I can tie all the way back to my energy saying, dude, you don't have the money, fuck it, put it on a credit card. And I put 15 grand on a credit card, and it is 5 years later, who I've met, what I've created, and where I'm going in my life has been affected. So when we feel this draw to work with somebody, whether it's a coach, a counselor, a therapist, anything, just say yes, figure out a way. And remember that we're good at what we practice. And when we're not practiced with investing our money and the resources that we've created in our lives into ourselves, I'll always say, your life has something to do with you. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. How many minutes do you give non-negotiable to the development of your life, which is your whole purpose of being alive, is to be alive and to live? 1,440 minutes in a day. How many do you give yourself? I ask my clients for 90 minutes of daily success habits. And people say, I don't have 90 minutes in my day. 6.24% of your day. If you give yourself 90 minutes a day, you are giving yourself 6.24% of your life to you. Come on.
Whoa.
So when we face this thing that's like, that's a lot of money. I'm worth it. I get to remember that it's time to start learning that I can invest in me. I don't just have to pay for a house and for food and for clothes, because the best me creates the best life. So if it's 15 grand on a credit card, if I'm in a shitty energy, don't put the 15 grand on the credit card. If I'm in a great energy and I'm feeling drawn towards this, then do the thing, say yes. And remember that we're just breaking patterns and programs. So if the AGRIMINDS Summit is something like, it's not for what you're going to get. I'll say for what you're going to get, if you show up with presence and awareness and really do the work that just I'm going to bring, and we got other speakers that are going to be super amazing. If you show up, it'll be worth the money just for that. Guaranteed. If you show up and you own it and you start making these changes in your life. So if you're drawn to like, man, I'd really like to do it, then just make it happen. Invest in you. And it's going to be life-changing.
Yeah. Oh,
that's it.
Thank you for saying that. That felt so good. And I agree with you. Yeah. Mic drop.
Dude, the cost of it is when people get the cost of working together with me and then they get done and then they realize that the work we did and who they are and who they've become because of them, not because of me. I know what I'm doing and I do really good with what I do. Yes. But you're the answer. And my job is to work myself out of a job. So when I work with somebody for 4 months intensively, if they came back and said, Greg, I need you, I have grossly failed you because I've given you everything that I have. Like, let's set you up. It is forever. It is going to change the trajectory of the rest of your life, not because of who I am, but because you decided to answer the call, to show up, to do something different with your life, to realize that the expression of your soul gets to come through and you can change this body to do that. And that's everything. And so that your summit's going to be awesome for everybody who wants to show up to really do the work and make a change. You're going to have the codes and the keys given to you but it's going to be, you're the answer. So you're going to have to do the work. So show up. We'll see you there.
So good. Thank you so much for being on. And I cannot wait to see you again in March. So I'll put the information for the summit if people are like, hell yeah, let's go. Click the link in the show notes and it'll take you straight there. So Greg, thank you so much for being on the AGRIMINDS podcast.
It's a pleasure as always.